Another thing that I do as I go is I outline my novel as I go. So outliners will outline their novel before they start as a way to help them stay structured. I outline my novel as I go to help me remember what has happened previously. And then when I write future books in a series, I can refer to the outline instead of having to reread the book. So my outlines are always 100% up to date.
I wanted to go back to what you were saying about outlining, kind of retrospectively outlining. And could you describe some of the ways you put that outline to use, either while you're writing or perhaps after you've written the book?
Yeah, it's helpful at all stages of the process. It's helpful when I'm writing because it helps me concretize my thoughts. So you're never going to remember your novel as much as when you're writing it, right? I mean, if you're writing in the moment, you're going to know intimately all of the details of that particular chapter. And you're going to remember what the setting looks like. You're going to remember what the character was wearing, how they're feeling, all of that. And the further away you get from that moment when you're writing the chapter, the harder it becomes to remember. So I kind of think of it as an insurance policy. Like I'm writing all this stuff down. Like I write in my outline, I write down what happens in the chapter at a very high level. I write down descriptions that I've used for the setting. I also write down any particular descriptions that I've used, and then any other details that I might need to remember later, like a particular artifact or, a particular description that the character uses or narrative, whatever, right? And then I do that at the end of every chapter. And that way, when I'm later in the book and I need to come back, I can just refer to the outline. Okay, yeah, the barn was full of hay and there were horses in the barn and there was a lantern on the wall. Okay, for whatever reason, I need to know that. All right. Well, I can remember that when I'm in chapter 35, all right, because I can go back to the outline. Now, what's more important though, is if you're writing a series. So it's amazing how much you forget from book to book. I continue to be astounded by how much I forget, even when I write books back to back. Like I'll finish a novel and then I'll jump into the next novel. And then I have a character doing something completely different. Wait a minute. No, that's not right. He doesn't look like that or blah, blah, blah. And it's really easy to do. And, imagine with more time passes between your books, how much of a problem this becomes. So to me, the outline is really an insurance policy for when you're writing future books, because it's just not helpful or efficient to have to go back and reread your entire novels every time you need to remember something. So it becomes a story Bible in a way.
Yeah, the story Bible idea is one that I'm very interested in. I recently talked with Kara Malone about using AI to help do a story Bible. I'm going to get back to the AI aspect in a moment, but I try to see, I'm making this a two perspectives on, even though I said I wasn't going to, but I'm trying to be more diligent about doing what you're saying. But when I do it is, when I'm done, the last thing I do is I have my computer read the story to me. At that point, I'm just picking up like duplicated words or things like that a spell checker wouldn't, or a writing aid or whatever. And I'm trying to be more diligent about making those notes at that point, because at that point, I know I'm not going to be tweaking anymore. God help us. And I find that usually I have a file on my computer where I have Word files, actually PDFs of all my books. And so 90% of the time, if I'm like, did that tertiary character have a beard or mustache? I can usually find that with some searching within the document. But I had a question come up the other day, and I'm hoping this is the kind of thing that AI will soon be able to help me with, if it can't already. I'd like to load all my books into it, and then I would like to be able to ask the AI, did this character ever meet this character in person? Because there are two very important characters that I can't for the life of me remember if in the first 4 books they ever actually met each other in person. And it makes a difference to this one plot point in book 5. Are you experimenting at all with AI for story Bibles, or does the story Bible approach you're describing address that question that I just posed?
Okay, so there's a lot here. So,
yes.
Okay, so yes, I have experimented with this. I have experimented with it in ChatGPT. So ChatGPT Plus has a feature that allows you to create custom GPTs. And the benefit of custom GPTs is it's like a customized mini version of ChatGPT that you can train. and you can train it by uploading knowledge documents. So in theory, what you should be able to do is upload manuscripts of all your novels in a series, have that become the training document for ChatGPT, and then you would be able to ask it questions just like you said. In practice, it does not work right now.
Okay.
It does not work right now. And the reason for it is because it hallucinates. It also has some difficulty ingesting lots of text. It can ingest a PDF, but it seems like the longer it gets, the harder of a time it has doing that. And it does give a lot of false positives. And I tested this about a month ago, and I tested it pretty extensively with a series I've got that's got about 7 books right now. And it didn't give me any results that I liked. There were things that were wrong. There were things that were not quite right. It made up characters. So I do think, though, that the architecture is there. And at some point, whether it's GPT-5 or, a future version, I do think that it will be able to get there and be able to help us create story Bibles in exactly the way that you mentioned. In the meantime, I just use a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And that works because I can filter it by character. I can filter it by scene, and I can kind of find what I'm looking for quickly. I think the goal is just the goal is if you can find something on your outline faster than you can find it in your book. And that's just, it just takes practice. It's ultimately, figuring out what are the sorts of questions that you find yourself asking and making sure that you capture those questions as you're writing in the future.
Yeah, I think that
answers.
The benefit of that spreadsheet approach, rather than me searching within a PDF book by book, is that if you're keeping one big spreadsheet of all your notes about a series, then you could say, show me all the, if you've organized your spreadsheet correctly, you could say, show me all the ways I've described this character's house. Exactly. And then you could say, oh, yeah, well, in book 1, they only ever went into the living room. So this is how I described it. But then in book 2, they had the opportunity to go upstairs. And then I have to remember this part of it. It would be kind of nice to see the development of that over a series as well as within a book, which is kind of what I'm limited to when I'm using the search approach.
Yeah. And what I do is I write down the key details. So if there's a detail that I think is going to be repeated or that I would like to repeat, those are the ones that I write down. And so that helps me. And you mentioned the house. It's funny because I do that exact same thing. Like I've got a character in the series I'm writing right now, The Good Necromancer, where his house is a really important part of the series. And in every book, he does kind of go into a different area of the house. And so I have to remember, because he likes to talk about his house a lot. So I have to remember what rooms he's in, what's in there, and also what he said about them. Because he gives some history and some details about, because it's a historic home. So things like that are really helpful to keep in your outline.
Yeah. Yeah, I realized that is that across all my books and short stories, there are a couple of go-to home decor styles that I used, and trying to keep that in mind, I have to vary it up a bit. But I was thinking when you were saying about the danger of an AI hallucinating when it was trying to give you story Bible information, I wonder if at the point where the AI is better about ingesting large quantities of data but is still hallucinating, I wonder if you could address that by saying, let me know if character A has ever met character B in person and show me the text where that happens. And then if you still didn't trust it, you could actually search your master documents for that text to make sure that it hadn't made up the reference text it was giving you.
You could, but if you have to still go back into the reference text, then I think you've kind of defeated the purpose.